When did that come about?
Right. So the pageant world to me is something that it was an interesting season of life. It was nothing that I was ever groomed for. It was nothing that was ever on my radar.
What if everything was under control until one leak changed everything overnight? Because right now, people are reacting to a situation involving Erika that no one saw coming, and somehow it's being linked back to Miss USA. At first, it sounded like noise, just another rumor. But then something changed. Details started surfacing, and suddenly, it didn't feel random anymore. And this is where it gets strange. Because the more people looked into it, the more it felt like this wasn't supposed to come out at all. So now the question is, what exactly was in that leak? And why did it hit Erika so hard? To understand why this situation exploded so quickly, you have to look at how unexpected the connection was. Because Erika's name and Miss USA weren't something people had been linking before. Not publicly. Not clearly. At least, not until now. It started quietly. A few posts. A couple of mentions. Nothing major. Most people ignored it. Because honestly, it didn't make immediate
pageants from the very beginning. Her mother is definitely the person who pushed that. I actually do believe that Erika loved basketball. There's no question she plays basketball. But this idea that she didn't want it is just not true. It's so objectively not true. Erika, without question, and anybody who's being objective and honest and looking at her history, at the people that she dated, and the people that she wanted to be in close proximity to, can guarantee to you if this girl wanted to be famous, like very badly wanted to be famous one way or the other. And one of her exes was very clear. He said to me, I was warned by another person in beauty pageant world that girl will do anything to get to the top, and her mother will do anything to
sense. But then something changed. A leak surfaced. Not a full document. Not a complete story. Just fragments. Pieces that hinted at some kind of overlap, something connecting Erika to conversations or situations tied to Miss USA. And that's when everything shifted. Because now, it wasn't just random speculation. It felt like something had slipped out. And this is where it gets strange. The leak didn't explain itself. No context. No clear timeline. Just enough detail to raise questions. And those questions spread fast. Because once people saw even a small connection, they started digging, looking for anything that could confirm it. But here's the problem. Nothing was fully verified. No official statement. No clear source. Just fragments that felt real enough to believe. And that's what made it powerful. Because now, the story wasn't about what was confirmed. It was about what might be true. And that's when things started escalating. Because once uncertainty enters a story like this, people don't wait for answers. They create them. And suddenly, what started as a small leak became something much bigger. It started with a screenshot, not a video, not a statement, just a single image that began circulating quietly. At first, most people didn't even recognize what they were looking at. It looked like part of a conversation, text message, short lines, no full context. But then something changed. People started reading it closely, and that's when they noticed something that didn't make sense. A reference. Subtle, easy to miss, but tied directly to Miss USA. And suddenly, everything felt different. Because now, that screenshot wasn't random. It was connected, and this is where it gets strange. The messages didn't mention Erika by name. Not clearly. But there were hints, references, details that people began linking back to her. And once that connection was made, there was no going back. But here's the problem. The screenshot wasn't complete. No timestamps, no full conversation, just fragments. And fragments can mean anything. But that didn't stop it from spreading. Because once people believe something might be real, they treat it like it is. And it doesn't stop there. More images started appearing. Different angles, different parts of what looked like the same conversation. And now, it wasn't just one screenshot. It was multiple pieces. And together, they started to feel like a bigger story, even if they weren't confirmed. And that's when things started falling apart. because people began filling in the gaps, assuming context, connecting dots that weren't fully there. And suddenly, a narrative formed that Erika had some kind of involvement or connection to something happening behind the scenes related to Miss USA. And that idea, it spread fast. But then something changed again. Someone pointed out inconsistencies. Small ones at first, formatting that didn't match, wording that felt slightly off, details that didn't fully align. And for a moment, it looked like the story might collapse. But it didn't. Because by that point, it didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to feel possible. And that's what kept it alive. Because now, people weren't asking, is this real? They were asking, what if it is? And that question, it pulled everything forward. But here's where the tension really started building. Because Erika hadn't responded. No comment, no denial, nothing to confirm or shut it down. And in a situation like this, silence doesn't help. It amplifies everything. Because now, every piece of the leak felt more important. Every detail felt like it meant something. And every missing answer made the story bigger. And that's what made this moment so powerful. Because it wasn't about what was proven. It was about what was suggested. And suggestion can spread faster than facts. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get more intense, another piece surfaced. And this one didn't just hint at a connection. It made everything feel a lot more serious. The next piece didn't look like a continuation. It looked like confirmation. Because alongside the screenshots, a short clip started circulating someone speaking off camera, describing what they claimed was happening behind the scenes. No fake, no identity, just a voice. And that's when everything changed. Because now, the story didn't just have images. It had narration. And this is where it gets strange. The voice wasn't making wild claims. It was calm, measured, like someone explaining something they already understood. They mentioned conversations, decisions, and again, a reference tied back to Miss USA. And once people heard that, it made the screenshots feel more real. But here's the problem. There was no way to verify the voice. No name. No source. Nothing to confirm who was speaking or why. And yet, it spread faster than anything before. Because hearing something feels different than reading it. It feels closer, more believable. And it doesn't stop there. The clip was edited, shortened, reposted with captions that made it sound more definitive than it actually was. Certain phrases pulled out, emphasized, and suddenly, what was originally vague started to sound like a direct claim. And that's when things started falling apart even faster. Because now, people weren't just analyzing the leak. They were reacting to what they thought it confirmed. And that reaction? It grew quickly. Because now, the narrative had multiple layers. Screenshots, audio, connections being made in real time. And together, it felt complete, even if it wasn't. But then something changed again. People started noticing contradictions. Details in the audio didn't fully match what was shown in the screenshots. Certain timelines didn't line up, and that created tension. Because now, the story had cracks. But here's where it got more complicated. Those cracks didn't stop the spread. They fueled it. Because now, people weren't just asking, is this real? They were asking, which part is real? And that's a much more powerful question, because it assumes something is true, even if not everything is. And that's what kept the story moving, because now even doubt became part of the narrative. Some believed the leak was authentic. Others believed parts of it were altered. And some thought it was all misinterpreted, but no one had certainty. And that uncertainty, it made everything bigger. Because the less clear something is, the more people talk about it. And that's exactly what happened. But the biggest twist? Still no response from Erika. No clarification. No explanation. Just silence. And that silence? It made every new piece feel more significant. Because now, people weren't just looking at the leak. They were looking at the reaction to it. Or the lack of one. And that's what made it intense. Because in situations like this, silence doesn't end the story. It deepens it. And just when it seemed like the narrative couldn't get more complicated, another piece surfaced. And this time, it didn't just add to the story. It changed how people saw everything. The next piece didn't look like evidence. It looked like context. And that's what made it dangerous. Because someone took the screenshots, the audio, and started building a timeline. Not a confirmed one, but a structured one. Connecting moments, dates, conversation, and placing Erika right in the middle of it. And this is where it gets strange. At first, the timeline didn't introduce anything new. It just rearranged what people had already seen. But once everything was placed in order, it felt different. It felt intentional. But here's the problem. A timeline can make anything look connected, even things that aren't. And yet, this one spread fast because it told a story. A clear one, with a beginning, a middle, and a direction. And it doesn't stop there. The timeline suggested that the leak wasn't random, that it came out at a specific moment for a specific reason. And that idea, it changed everything. Because now, people weren't just asking what the leak showed. They were asking why it happened now. And that question, it pulled everything into focus. But then something changed again. People started noticing overlaps. Moments where Erika's activity aligned with the timeline being shared. Posts, appearances, small details that seemed to match. And that's when things started falling apart. Because now, the narrative felt supported. Not proven, but supported. And that's enough for it to grow. But here's where the tension really escalated. Another layer appeared. Someone pointed out that parts of the timeline didn't match public records. Dates were slightly off. Events overlapped in ways that didn't make sense. And suddenly, the story became unstable again. Because now, there were two possibilities. Either the timeline was incomplete, or it was incorrect. And both of those options created more questions. And that's what made it intense. Because now, people weren't just debating what happened. They were debating what version of the story was closer to reality. And that split, it made everything bigger. Because once a story divides like that, it doesn't slow down. It accelerates. And that's exactly what happened. Because now, every new post, every new theory, every new breakdown added another layer, another interpretation, another possibility. But the biggest twist? Still no confirmation, no statement, no clear answer from Erika. And that silence, it became the center of everything. Because now, people weren't just watching the story, they were waiting for something that would either confirm it or completely collapse it. And that waiting, it kept the tension alive. Because the longer it went without an answer, the more serious it felt. And just when it seemed like things couldn't escalate any further, they did. Because now, it wasn't just random users or small accounts driving the story. Bigger voices stepped in, and that's when everything changed. And that's when everything exploded. Because now, it wasn't just scattered posts or random clips anymore. It was everywhere. Larger accounts started picking it up, not confirming it, but analyzing it, breaking it down, asking questions out loud. And that changed the tone instantly. Because once bigger voices enter the conversation, it stops feeling like noise. It starts feeling real. And this is where it gets strange. Each new breakdown didn't add clear answers. It added confidence. Confidence in different directions. Some creators said the timeline made sense, that the pieces, while incomplete, pointed towards something real involving Miss USA. Others said the opposite, that the inconsistencies proved the entire thing was falling apart. And both sides, it sounded convincing. That's what made it intense. Because now, it wasn't just speculation, it was a conflict. But here's the problem. No one had proof, just interpretations of fragments. And that's when things started falling apart even faster. Because now, people began analyzing everything, not just the leak, not just the audio, but Erika's behavior, her activity, her timing, when she posted, when she didn't, what she said, what she avoided. And suddenly, every small detail became part of the story. And it doesn't stop there. People started comparing older content, looking for patterns, looking for moments that now felt off in hindsight. And when you look backward with a new narrative in mind, everything starts to look different. But then, something changed. Doubt started growing louder, not quieter. Because the more people analyzed, the more inconsistencies they found. Not just in the timeline, but in the screenshots, in the audio, in how everything connected. And that raised a new question. Not, is this real? But how much of this is real? And that question, it shook everything. Because now, the story wasn't stable. It was shifting. But here's where the tension really peaked. Still no response. Nothing from Erika. No statement. No clarification. And in a situation like this, silence doesn't protect you. It amplifies everything. Because now, every theory fills that silence. Every assumption grows stronger. And every unanswered question becomes more important. And that's what made it overwhelming. Because the story wasn't slowing down. It was expanding in multiple directions at once. And no one was controlling it anymore. But then, the biggest twist hit. Not another clip. Not another theory. Something else. Something that didn't just add to the chaos. It cut through it. And once people saw it, everything changed. Because suddenly, the story wasn't just unclear. It was something else entirely. And if what surfaced next is true, then everything we've seen so far might not mean what we thought it did. And then, the piece that changed everything finally surfaced. Not another screenshot, not another clip. The source. Because someone traced the leak back to where it actually started. And this is where it gets strange. It wasn't connected to Erika the way people thought. Not directly. The original material came from a completely different context, an unrelated conversation that referenced Miss USA in a broader discussion. But once that piece was isolated, it was reframed, edited, reposted, and suddenly, it looked like something else. But here's the problem. When context is removed, meaning changes. And that's exactly what happened. Because the screenshots people were sharing, they were fragments. Pieces taken from a longer exchange that, in full, didn't point clearly to Erika at all. And it doesn't stop there. The audio clip, it matched the same pattern. Cut down, rearranged. Certain lines emphasized. Others were removed. And when you compare the original to the viral version, the difference is obvious. But by the time that difference was noticed, the narrative had already spread. Because once people believe a story, they don't go back to check the original. They build on what they saw first. And that's the reveal. Not that Erika was blindsided by something real, but that situation was reshaped into something it wasn't. And once that reshaping happened, everything else followed. The timeline, the theories, the reactions, all built on the same incomplete foundation. And if that's true, then the biggest twist isn't about the leak itself. It's about how easily it became something bigger. Because now, the question isn't what was exposed, it's how did something this unclear turn into something so widely believed? And once you ask that, the entire situation looks different. When you step back and look at everything together, the screenshots, the audio, the timeline, and finally the original source, it stops being about a shocking leak. It becomes about how quickly meaning can change. Because what this situation really shows isn't just about Erika or even Miss USA, it's about how narratives form. Think about it. A fragment appears. Context is missing. People try to understand it. They fill in the gaps. And suddenly, a full story exists, even if the original piece never supported it. And this is where it hits deeper. The more dramatic a story feels, the faster it spreads. And the faster it spreads, the less time people take to question it. That's exactly what happened here. By the time anyone looked at the full context, the narrative had already taken hold. And once that happens, it's hard to reverse. because perception moves faster than correction. And that's what makes this so powerful. Not just what was shared, but how it was interpreted. Because once something feels real, it doesn't matter how incomplete it is. People treat it like truth. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not just what happened in this situation, but how easily something unclear can become something convincing.